We start in 1 minute. Please check your phone. Good morning. This meeting is called to order. For the record, the time is 1:30 p.m. The date is August 5th, 2025. Commission and staff are appearing from Helena, Montana, in the Bollinger Room of the Montana Public Service Commission. I am Brad Molnar. I'm the presiding chairman for this meeting. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. For the record, the following commissioners are present. We have Commissioner Wellborn, we have Commissioner Panucci, Commissioner Fielder, and Commissioner Bukacek. Therefore, we have a quorum. The Public Service Commission welcomes any comment on any item that is on today's agenda or any matter that is within jurisdiction of the Montana PSC. Are there any public commenters in the room? Please come up, push the center where it says push, and your mic will be live. Okay, please give your name and spell it. Tell us where you're from. You don't have to give your personal address, just city, and it's yours.
Good afternoon.
Is your mic on?
Yes, it's green. I'm Kayleen Aldrich, spelled K-E-L-E-E-N-A-L-D-R-I-C-H. I live in Helena, and I am a resident of the North Star community and a homeowner on Star Road. Since you will be addressing the ongoing water issues today, I would like to take a moment to kind of share as a homeowner what we deal with on an ongoing basis, but particularly in the summer months. I have been a homeowner on Star Road for 6 years, and all but one of those years, we have been here in this meeting with on the agenda for ongoing water issues and shut off of our water. On July 1st, we got a letter that or an email that our outdoor watering would be constricted to 1 hour in the morning, 4 to 5 a.m., and 1 hour in the evening, 8 to 9 p.m. Not really convenient times, but it said it was until July 4th. During the 6 weeks since we were notified, we have had 5 days with no watering was allowed at all, and we are still at this time constricted to the 2 hours a day on our odd even days. As homeowners, we pay for 10,000 gallons a month and an additional fee for any over the 10,000. My household averages 3,000 gallons per month in the non-summer months. During May and August, we use about 25,000 gallons, to which we pay for the overage. And all that is just to water our lawns and keep our flowers alive. The problem is currently not fixed. We are still restricted with no updates, no information, and certainly no sense of urgency to fix the problem. We don't hear anything other than the emails of water restrictions. We have poorly done signs posted at entrances by our mailboxes, and that's how we're supposed to know when we can water. I expect and should have access to water my yard. I don't have a large yard, but I take pride in my home and want to retain the value of keeping my lawn alive. Most homeowners spend a lot for fertilizing and to maintain our homes and our lawns. But without water available, it's a waste of our time and money. Neighborhoods are declining in value and look distasteful since we can't water and maintain them. Many, particularly on Star Road, have rocked their yards as they are just given up on this situation. I would estimate 30% of those homes have done so, therefore reducing the need for water. These shutdowns and limited availability is never really due to lack of water. It's about the system not being maintained and supported. Thankfully, Mother Nature is helping us with some rainfall this summer. Are you aware of several recently reported instances of their operators entering properties to determine if water is occurring during the off hours? These instances are being reported to the Helena Police Department, as there is no way to identify them. other than a stranger on homeowners' properties taking photos, often late evenings or after dark. This is how they monitor us. Instead of fixing the problem, they are harassing, trespassing, and bullying homeowners. And all we want to do is get the water that we pay for. Frustration levels are very high. Homeowners are selling or now considering selling. We ask PSC, please, on our behalf, hold North Star accountable to fix and maintain the watering system. So many of us, as briefly discussed in last week's meeting, so much of this is avoidable. North Star doesn't seem to care or even attempt to resolve anything unless they're forced by this group. That is not acceptable, and homeowners should not have to cope year after year, nor should PSC have to spend so much of your time and attention on the same issue year after year. Just kind of to close, we thank you for your attention. We thank you for your support, and we hope that we can get some resolution to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Kayleen. We have another public commenter on site. Mr. Jackson. Welcome. Is the green light still on the mic?
Yes, it is.
Okay, just
Yes, it is.
adjust it as you see necessary.
My name is Ralph Jackson, RALPH-JACKSON. Commissioners, Mr. Chairman, I live in Helena. I'm a resident of North Star subdivision. I'm not going to talk about, as Kayleen, I'm not going to talk about the fines and stuff. The biggest thing I want to talk about is water usage based on June's filings by North Star Water. Some of it's from the spreadsheet and some of it's from the statement from Brian Mills. So first thing is there were 16 total residents who were 40,000 gallons and above for the month of June. We don't have July's yet, so, and it wouldn't be accurate anyway. So that's about 6%. Of those, 9 of them were between 40,000 and 50,000 gallons. So that's not very many. That's less, less than 10%. There also were 120 residents that use less than 10,000 gallons, which is about 44%. Of those, 38% used less than 3,000 gallons. Now, this is in a month where the total water outlay from North Star Water was 4,306,300 gallons. So, that was a pretty substantial water usage. So, so that's about 136, or about half of the units. So the other half of the units used less than 40,000 gallons, but more than 10,000 gallons, which is a reasonable amount during a time when we irrigate. The point I guess I'm trying to make is, although there are people that clearly are not following the rules, there are also an extremely large amount of them who aren't even getting to that 10,000 gallon threshold where they would have to pay for any additional dollars. I guess to me that indicates that I don't feel that we're really overwatering our residents. Now, some of that's due to the size of the units. Some of them that are like rentals have no grass or very little grass, and they're much smaller, so they don't use as much water. And there's a extremely varying size of yards in our subdivision. The other thing I want to talk about and address is this missing water that seems to show up. in May, because in June's, they didn't indicate the amount of metered water that was used. Normally they do on their report and they didn't, so I had to go back to May. So in May, they outlaid 4,306,300, and they metered 3,510,793 for a difference of 795,500 or 18%. In April, which is normally before irrigation, the outlay was 1,650,400, and the metered was 1,276,500 for a difference of 373,900 or 23%. In March, the total outlay was 1,463,800, and the metered was 1,187,290 or 276,510 or about 19%. Now, the thing that tells me is that because the percentage is maintaining about the same, somewhere in the neighborhood of 20%. It was as high as 23 and as low as 18, but somewhere in that 20%. Whether we're irrigating or not irrigating, okay? That tells me that the issue may not have anything to do specifically with the fact that we're irrigating, which I think at times was an implication. So I think maybe North Star Water needs to look at maybe another reason. Some of that could be because there were meters that they had some issues with. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of meters to make that amount go up. But overall, that can't be the whole thing. So it seems to me that we need to find out where that water's going, because it does not appear to be going to the residents based on the fact that the percentage doesn't seem to change from very light usage to very heavy usage. The amount changes a lot, but the percentage of that doesn't change. And then just finally, the goal of this whole process is to guarantee that we have adequate water for summer irrigation. And one of the things, based on the information from the reports, they always put at the bottom of their sheet, their spreadsheet, a number. And that number is not the total of those meters above, usage above. That is the total outlay that they have. So I think it was in June, it was like 4,700,000 and some thousand. They did not indicate what the metered amount was that in their report that month. But I don't know that it's fair for them to put that number at the bottom when we're not really sure where that water's going. But anyway, for adequate water for summer irrigation, we need to all work towards that goal. The PSC, the residents, maybe, we can get more of them, as few as there are, get more of them to follow the rules. And North Star Water, as the previous commenter said, we can't keep having this every summer, okay? And it has always been in the hottest part of the summer when the usage is higher, but it's rarely because exclusively because of usage. This summer it was because a line got a short in it. And it's still not fixed. So if fines will help that, that's good. But more importantly, we just all need to work together so that the people who do water and do have lawns to water and take care of, that they have an opportunity to do that for the whole summer. I do appreciate the fact that they allowed us to water for most of this period for 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the evening. That's better than we've had sometimes in the past where we haven't been able to irrigate in the summer. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to voice my opinion, make my comment.
If you're ever looking for a job as a statistician, we are hiring. Hey, are there any commenters online? Seeing none. Moving right along. Are there any announcements or changes to the agenda? There are. The week of September, was it, Vice Chairman?
Mr. President,
Yeah, you want to handle it? You got it written down. You're doing better than I am.
sure, I will move approval of the commission minutes for the week of July 20, or excuse me, yes, July 28th,
I
2020.
was on announcements.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We canceled a work session September, what to what?
Sorry, Mr. President. Yes, the commission in our scheduling meeting voted to not hold commission meetings the week of September 8th through the 12th due to some scheduling conflicts with the use of our facility and with some conferences that commissioners may attend. So it's no commission business meetings September 8th through the 12th.
Should that change, we'll keep you apprised. So far as approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion on the approval of the minutes?
I'm all queued up for that now,
Oh,
Mr. President.
I can tell you're,
Okay.
you know, one foot in the starting block and the other one on the finish line. Go ahead.
Mr. President, I move approval of the commission minutes for the week of July 28th, 2025.
We have a motion for approval. Do we have a second? We have a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval of the minutes signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. The ayes have it. So we're going to get into the meat of the subject here. Docket 2020.09.094 North Star Development, i.e. the Commission's investigation of the rules, practices, and services of North Star and the adequacy of service to consider a recommendation regarding penalty amount to be imposed against North Star. Ooh. We have a full table. Who is handling the lead on this? Take it away.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, Mr. President and commissioners. As you know, we're here today because in July and August of 2024, the commission began receiving complaints from North Star's customers. Those complaints included allegations that North Star had implemented an emergency prohibition on lawn watering due to inadequate water supply, and that North Star had implemented a water boiling advisory due to potential contamination of the water supply. The commission responded to those complaints by directing staff to investigate the matter, which staff did, starting with sending North Star an investigative letter that contained certain investigatory requests. When North Star failed to timely respond to the investigative letter, as you know, the commission issued an order to show cause that directed North Star to explain why it should not be monetarily penalized for failing to comply with Montana law. After considering North Star's response to the show cause order, the commission ultimately determined that North Star should be monetarily penalized for two things. First, failing to cooperate with the commission during an investigation, and secondly, failing to provide reasonably adequate service. In your reading materials, you have a 12-page detailed staff memorandum dated August 1st, 2025 that sets forth staff's recommendation as to how much those penalties should be and the basis for them. But before I start talking about those recommendations, for the benefit of any listeners, I'd like to touch on a couple of other important items that are discussed in the memorandum before you. The first is the fact that as much as the commission may wish to order North Star to drill new wells or haul water in for its customers or connect to third-party water sources, the law is clear that the commission does not have the power to manage or operate North Star. In other words, the commission cannot stand in the shoes of North Star itself and make decisions about what should or should not be done operationally to rectify any failures to comply with Montana law. What the commission does have the power to do is impose monetary penalties against North Star whenever it fails to meet its responsibilities under Montana law. Now, that doesn't mean that the commission cannot encourage or recommend that North Star voluntarily undertake certain operational activities, as the commission has done in recent business meetings. The second thing I want to touch on before getting to the recommendation regarding penalty amounts is the fact that when the commission decides to impose monetary penalties against a utility, it should follow a process that ensures that the utility has ample opportunity to comment on or otherwise address the propriety of any contemplated penalty. A way to do that is for the commission to establish preliminary penalty amounts, then give the utility an opportunity to explain why those amounts should not be the final penalty amounts. And after hearing the utility's position on the preliminary penalty amounts, decide what the final penalty should be. So with that in mind, in the memorandum in your reading material, staff has recommended preliminary penalty amounts for both North Star's failure to cooperate with the commission during an investigation and its failure to provide reasonably adequate service. So now let's talk about these recommendations. By law, the commission can penalize North Star for each day it failed to meet its responsibilities under law. The amount of that daily penalty can be no less than $300 and no more than $1,000. Turning first to North Star's failure to cooperate with the commission during an investigation, staff recommends that North Star be penalized $300 a day for 26 days, which results in a recommended preliminary penalty of $7,800. As I mentioned, the staff memorandum details the basis for that recommendation, so I'll just highlight some of the facts that staff noted in arriving at its recommendation. First, North Star, through its original legal counsel, led staff to believe that a response to the investigative letter would be timely provided, but it wasn't. Then North Star failed to formally request an extension to the deadline for responding to the investigative letter, even though it easily could have done that. And the response to the investigative letter, once it did show up, did not fully and directly respond to all of the investigatory requests in the letter, and no request for clarification was ever sought by North Star. Staff also took into consideration that after North Star changed its legal counsel, its cooperation with the commission greatly improved. Staff also took into consideration the fact that North Star is a small water utility, and as such, it has limited resources. The pertinent facts eventually led staff to recommend that the daily penalty should be something more than the minimum $100 a day. We settled on $300 a day, and that the penalty should cover the time between the deadline for responding to the investigative letter, which was August 23rd, 2024, and the time the response was actually provided, which was September 20th, 2024, and that equals 26 days. Moving on to North Star's failure to provide reasonably adequate service, staff recommends that North Star be penalized $300 a day for 263 days, which results in a recommended preliminary penalty of $78,900. Now, the staff memo again details all the bases for that recommendation, so again, just highlight certain facts that played a role in staff's recommendation. In Order 7744E, the commission stated that providing reasonably adequate service inherently requires that public utilities comply with relevant laws, and in the case of water utilities, it requires that the utility ensure its customers have an adequate water supply. So in determining its recommended preliminary penalty, staff looked at facts applicable to those things. North Star's tariff requires that it charge its customers for water service based on the amount of the water the customer uses. There are therefore at least two relevant laws that North Star has likely been violating for quite some time. The first is Montana Administrative Rule 38.5.2509, subpart 1. That rule requires North Star to install and maintain equipment necessary for the measurement of water in accordance with its tariffs. The second is Montana Code Annotated Section 69-3-305, which prohibits North Star from charging or collecting a greater or lesser amount for its water service than that specified in its tariffs. As you may recall, North Star is required to submit monthly reports to the commission. According to the reports North Star has filed, it was not until sometime in May 2025 that all of the residences to which North Star provides water service had functioning meters installed. That means that North Star could not have been complying with either Montana Administrative Rule 38.5.2509 subpart 1 or Montana Code Annotated Section 69-3-305 until sometime in May 2025. As far as providing an adequate water supply to its customers, in its response to the show cause order, North Star seemingly admitted that it had an inadequate water supply and blamed that on two things: a lack of water volume and overuse of water by its customers. To help address its lack of water volume, North Star did lower 3 of its pumps in September 2024. How much that helped with the water volume issue, however, remains to be seen because this is the first watering season since the pumps have been lowered. Also, it's notable that North Star did not take that action until after it implemented an emergency lawn watering prohibition in July of 2024. North Star has also suggested that part of its lack of water volume is due to the disappearance of over 1 million gallons of water per month. Based on the information provided by North Star, staff believes much of the disappearing water is actually water that was simply unaccounted for in the past because residences did not have functioning meters in place. As indicated in the memorandum, the disappearing water has decreased as the amount of the disappearing water has decreased as the amount of functioning meters has increased. Now, had North Star had functioning meters in place at all residences sooner, North Star might have been able to account for its disappearing water sooner and determined how best to address its water volume issue. As for the overuse of water by its customers, North Star has known for a long time that that problem could readily be addressed by filing a rate application. But it was not until the Commission Order 7744E, which was issued on December 18th, 2024, that North Star apparently took any active steps at all to begin preparing a rate case application. And then eventually it did commit to filing a rate application by September 30th, 2025. So this year we're expecting to see a rate application from North Star. In determining its recommended preliminary penalty for North Star's failure to provide reasonably adequate service, staff also again took into consideration the fact that North Star is a small water utility and it does have limited resources. Ultimately, the facts led staff to recommend that the daily penalty for failure to provide reasonably adequate service should be something more than the minimum $100. And again, we settled on $300 a day fine. And that the penalty should cover the time period beginning with the date the Commission issued its order to show cause associated with the July and August 2024 customer complaints. That was September 11th of 2024, and ending at the time which North Star indicated all residences to which it provides water service had functioning meters in place, which would be June 1st, 2025. And that is where the 263 days comes from. In total, staff's recommended preliminary penalties to be assessed against North Star is $86,700. Now, in making this recommendation, staff is cognizant of two important things. First, any penalties that are collected from North Star must be deposited in the state general fund. They cannot be used to directly benefit North Star's customers. And secondly, North Star's financial information indicates it may not be in a position to immediately pay the recommended preliminary penalty amount. According to information provided to staff by North Star, over the last 3 years, North Star's average cash on hand was only about $15,000, and its profit and loss information shows that it's lost between $83,000 and $115,000 each of the past 3 years. Given these facts, staff believes that once the Commission has established the preliminary penalties to be imposed against North Star, it would be appropriate for the Commission to authorize staff to enter into settlement discussions with North Star to negotiate a stipulated penalty and or other non-monetary means by which to account for North Star's failure to meet its responsibilities under Montana law, should North Star wish to engage in those discussions. Of course, as with all settlements, any settlement negotiated between staff and North Star would ultimately be presented to the Commission for review and approval, and all settlement terms and conditions would be contingent on the Commission's approval. Now, on the last page of the staff memorandum, staff sets forth all its formal recommendations associated with imposing penalties against North Star. In a nutshell, they are as follows. Staff recommends the Commission issue an order that does the following. Establishes the preliminary penalty amount to be imposed against North Star for failing to cooperate with the Commission at $7,800. establishes the preliminary penalty amount for North Star's failure to provide reasonably adequate service at $78,900. Sets a hearing date for a date no later than September 16th, 2025, to give North Star an opportunity to explain why the preliminary penalty amounts established by the commission should not be the final penalty amounts to be imposed against North Star. Authorizes staff attorney Laura Wachowski, that's me, and rate analyst Grant Fink to engage in settlement discussions with North Star on behalf of the agency for 60 days if North Star requests to enter into such negotiations by August 22nd, 2025. Direct staff to inform the commission if North Star requests to enter into settlement agreements. And finally, authorizes staff to stay the hearing mentioned previously pending the completion of negotiations should North Star request to enter into settlement negotiations. And with that, staff would be very happy to answer any questions the commission might have.
Do any other members of staff have any comments they'd like to add at this time?
I do not, Mr. President.
Seeing none. Do any commissioners have any questions of staff at this time?
Thank you,
Commissioner
Mr.
Bukacek.
President. So you answered two of my questions. So, and the entire memorandum is so well done. Thank you very much, staff. So, and there's so many things about it that have been clarified because of the memorandum. So one of the things, and this is a comment, not a question, but I do have a question. The memorandum lines out clearly and concisely the legal limits of what the PSC can do to help the water deprived residents of North Star. And you wrote it in there and you said it again. And I think it bears repeating what's in the memorandum, that Montana statutes, Montana Supreme Court's interpretation of the statutes, and an authoritative legal journal, they are in agreement, public service commissioners in their supervision, regulation, and control over public utilities are not to be micromanagers. We are not allowed to dictate how utilities remedy problems. We're not authorized to do that. So that's a comment. My question, it's on page 12. The second recommendation, it talks about negotiations. If you could please explain what you mean by non-monetary means by which to account for North Star's failure to meet its responsibilities under Montana law.
Mr. President, Commissioner Bukacek, yes. So non-monetary means would be anything other than basically a fine of money. It could range from them taking steps to have backup pumps available. It could involve having them commit to ensure that their electric shorts don't occur again, as we saw earlier this year. It could involve them taking action to secure additional water rights or drill new wells or anything that might help address their water supply issues.
Okay, excellent. As opposed to a fine going to the general fund.
Yes, correct,
To
Commissioner.
go to remedying the situation. Thank you very, very much.
Do any other Commissioner Panochi?
Couple questions that come to mind. A few years ago, we approved a rate increase, and the rate increase was going to help correct some of the problems. Are we able to find out, and I'm sure you don't have the answer today, but I think it's good to look into, is North Star able to show that they made improvements after they were approved with the rate increase, and what improvements and how much money did they spend? I think that's something I'd like to ask us to look into. And I think that the public, the ratepayers, would like to know that answer. Another point that I have is I really appreciate the work you've done, Laura, and I really appreciate North Star coming to speak to us, the ratepayers. So important. The input, especially that we have 10,000 gallons allocated for each homeowner, and some use less than 3, while only 16 use more than 10,000, leads me to believe that they're not adequately able to serve the 10,000 gallons per household that they promised. The other concern I'd like looked into is perhaps there's a leak underground or several leaks. There's hundreds of connections. Has anyone asked the question to shut the system off and see if we're losing pressure, shut the system off at each home, and then study if we're losing pressure? That can identify a leak. The other thing I'd like to let the homeowners know Because I think we've made it very clear in the past few years, and I've been here since the beginning, that we don't have the authority to manage how they run their system. However, the homeowners could turn to the legislature and give the Public Service Commission more power. Now, a couple ideas I have, and I'd like to hear from staff. One thing that the legislature could do is to say if any water system that serves, say, over 20 customers would be required to have redundancy, a backup pump, required to have storage so that a water truck could be hooked up. The legislature tells the Public Service Commission what to do, and maybe the answer here, folks, that have come to testify, is to turn to your legislators and give them some ideas to require the Public Service Commission to be more involved. I don't see this as a small water system. I look at Montana, and most of Montana does not have public water supply. And it's not uncommon for a neighbor to drill a well and the next door neighbors say, wow, can I hook up to your well? And the next thing you know, they're splitting the bill, or you got 10 or 12 people. That's a small system. I don't see a system serving over 100 homes as small, in my opinion. When you look at the whole state, to me, this is a good size system, in my opinion. And it should have more rules that the legislation give the Public Service Commission to mandate. Ideas like they could hook to the next public system with a meter and backfeed when they need it. Why water trucks aren't coming? These are good questions and suggestions. Also, I'd like to volunteer to attend one of your water meetings with the advice of the Public Service Commission attorney, of course. I'd like to hear more what's going on so I could be more involved. Also, I'd be willing to testify if the ratepayer would get with a legislator to increase the say or regulation the Public Service Commission could have, using this as an example. And I do support staff recommendations. Thank you.
Question for lead counsel on this. Your dissertation on the history of this indicated that their compliance with our request improved substantially after they got a new legal firm handling their business. How much of the penalty would come from before they changed? Do you have any breakdown on that?
Yes, Mr. President, I do. The 26 days actually goes up. The ending date is when they filed the response to the order show cause. And that was right around the time when they changed legal counsel. So this 26 days is related, I mean, as far as time-wise go, in association with their prior counsel, not thereafter. Commission staff has found since they changed legal counsel that they've been very, very cooperative. I've sent many emails to their counsel myself with asking for detailed information. That information has been satisfactory response. For example, one of the things we do when we get the reports, we scrutinize that information in the reports and the associated spreadsheets. And just a couple of weeks ago, when they were saying that they had all meters, all the residents were metered and had functioning meters, we looked at the spreadsheet and had a few questions because some of the information on the spreadsheet seemed to contradict that claim. And so I sent a long email to their counsel asking for some explanations about why we're seeing what we're seeing on the spreadsheet. She got on that right away, provided us with detailed information by each address, like what the situation was. And so I found them to be very cooperative, and that did play a role in our assessment of how many days it would be appropriate to fine North Star for their failure to cooperate with the commission during its investigation.
Okay, so just for clarity, I got lost in there a little bit. This would be, our penalties are based on actions or inactions after the change. So this is the new legal team.
No, sorry, Mr. President, if I wasn't clear. The penalties associated with actions that took place prior to the time North Star changed its counsel. It was when their former counsel represented to staff that a response would be filed in a timely manner, which it wasn't. And it would have been the responsibility of the lawyer at that time to ask for an extension of time. No formal extension was ever received. So no, the penalty is associated with actions that were taken by North Star through its prior attorney, not its current attorney, insofar as the cooperation is concerned.
Okay, so they're doing a lot better right now with their new legal team.
From staff's perspective, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Based on that and the chart on page 6, year 22, 23, 24, net profit loss in the same order, 116,000, 83,000, 91,000. Cash on hand, 15,000, 12,000, 18,000. I think you can write any amount of penalty you want and then take them 4 years to pay it and put no money back into the system. So I'm assuming, and this is going to your last page, that we're going to start off with an attempt at negotiation rather than legal action to lay out the penalty. Is that correct?
Well, Mr. President, first we'll need to establish some preliminary penalties, and then staff recommends that the order that the commission issues does give North Star an opportunity to engage in those discussions. It's really up to North Star as to whether or not they want to, what is their next step going to be? Would they like to just come in and argue about why it shouldn't be penalized at all? Would they like to just pay the penalty? Would they like to just fight it in district court, or would they like to engage in negotiations? For the reasons that I mentioned, staff believes that the negotiations might be fruitful and may come up with, as you mentioned, the financial situation is a bit questionable. It may actually result in something positive here. And so, but really the ball would be in the court of North Star to tell us whether or not they're interested in engaging in those negotiations if staff would authorize, if the commission would authorize staff to engage in the negotiations with North Star.
Okay. Hang on just a second, don't go anywhere. Okay, this might seem a little convoluted because I've been working on this with Commissioner Pinocci, but is it your feeling that first we have to assess the penalty and then go into negotiation, or can we go into negotiation and should those fail, assess a penalty?
Mr. President, I believe the proper procedure here would be to first assess a preliminary penalty so that North Star knows what the commission is thinking, what the preliminary penalty amount is. And if at that point, they would know that the commission, unless North Star can convince the commission otherwise, that basically is going to be the final penalty. And so it wouldn't make, I'm not sure what we would negotiate if we didn't actually have some preliminary penalties established. So my recommendation would be that we establish preliminary penalties in the first instance through issuance of order, and then give North Star an opportunity to tell us whether or not they'd like to come in and talk about stipulated penalties and or other non-monetary actions that they might like to take in lieu of actually paying a penalty.
Okay, so, and this comes a little secondhand, but I've been involved in quite a few negotiations on various things in my life. And I've been told that this is what we're going to do unless you do that, as opposed to this is what we've done, and now we're going to negotiate it. I recognize that if we assess a penalty and we collect it, it goes to the general fund. That money doesn't do the property owners any good. So what I would like to discuss with you, what would be so wrong with, and I'm not sold on the idea that first we have to assess a penalty before we can talk. I was saying that, going back to what Commissioner Pinocci talked about a week or so ago, that if we wind up having to assess a penalty, which we think would be what's in here, it's already public record, this is not a secret anymore, that we will subtract from the penalty your non-monetary. For example, if you go with each pump has its own line, its own breaker, so that if one goes out, you don't lose all of them, you don't lose the next one. If you have and you mentioned a backup pump in their reserve. So if that one goes out, certainly things like this will not handle the whole problem. It handles reliability. So why can't we say that the non-monetary, this is, the penalty that we're talking about. It's public record. You can watch the video, but whatever you put into improving the system, whether it's another well, a deeper well, whatever the case might be, will be subtracted from that, so that the money doesn't go to the general fund, because you can't claw it back. It'd take appropriation committee vote on that. But rather, we don't want to penalize you. We want better service. We want more reliability. We want the people to get a benefit from their amount. If we take this approach, I believe, certainly staff can weigh in, that then they don't get another rate increase because it's being done in lieu of a penalty. They're not saying we put $40,000 into rewiring and a new pump and this and that. Therefore, we want it back. They've already done it. It didn't work. We've already given them money. So it's not part of a rate increase. The people aren't paying more for the same, but rather they're getting better service. Will that solve all the problems? Can we solve all the problems? Can we guarantee there'll never, ever be these problems again? No, but we can ensure reliability. We can let them use their $18,000. I've got more than that, and I'm a poor man. I don't know how much they can do, but to wire a couple of pumps is a roll of wire and a couple of breakers. A pump in standby installed. If this one goes out, this one kicks in. A port for the trucks. You can probably do all of those things for very small money, but I would not want to take money away that can give compliance and good service and give it to the state of Montana just to show how tough we can be. Can we do that under Montana law?
So, Mr. President, I understand exactly what you're saying, and this is part of the reasons that staff recommended the commission authorize staff to enter into negotiations for these very reasons you're talking about. But the commission has already said that it's going to impose penalties. It said that in the last order that issued here. And so the statutory scheme with penalties is money. And so the process that, in my opinion, we should be following is, in a way, there's a couple of different processes we're talking about here. So the process for penalties it's monetary, but to get you where I believe you'd like to be, which is not ending up having North Star simply paying money that then goes to the general fund, is by basically once North Star has an idea of what the penalties are going to be, at least at a preliminary stage. Again, that's not the final order. It's a preliminary penalty, which is why staff recommended, part of the reason that the commission followed this process. First, establish preliminary penalties. Then North Star knows what it's looking at. So if I'm understanding you correctly, what you'd rather have done for whatever preliminary penalty that the commission decides is appropriate, that in lieu of paying that money, that North Star would commit to basically taking some steps operationally to help ensure that they have an adequate water supply. So they can do that. This kind of thing can work in negotiations. So if North Star wants to do that and the commission would authorize staff to do it, we can have those discussions. Of course, they're confidential discussions in negotiations. And then if all things go well, then perhaps we would come back to the commission and say, all right, in lieu of paying the preliminary penalty, North Star has committed with hopefully certain timelines in place and certain requirements set in place, reporting, compliance, and ramifications if they don't get things done that they've committed to by a certain time, because as we all know, sitting here, that has been a problem, at least as far as my understanding about meters being installed, functioning at everyone's house. The place to achieve that, I believe, is in negotiations. But I think, again, it's still necessary. We said we would impose penalties. Let's establish those preliminary penalties. Let's invite North Star to come in and have those discussions with us. And then once those discussions are had, assuming that there's some resolution there, let staff then come back and present what North Star and staff believes may be a reasonable alternative to what you're talking about, which is, not having to just pay a fine and the money then goes. We, as a staff team, certainly share those concerns. And that's why we believe that this approach that we recommend is the best approach. Let's get a number, a preliminary number. So we know what we're looking at. That helps us in several respects, everybody actually in the negotiations, is because we believe that North Star, I mean, we all know this problem has been going on for quite some time, right? And the commission has already said that their actions are worthy of having penalties imposed. Let's have a number. That also helps people to think about, well, what's equivalent to $90,000 in penalties? What kind of actions would be equivalent to that? Would they take otherwise than giving, paying the fine of $90,000? Can they invest $90,000 in infrastructure upgrades, routine maintenance, whatever it is? That having that number helps, in my opinion, it helps in negotiating something that is equivalent. All right. Because whatever the commission decides is a worthy preliminary penalty, and maybe the commission will decide that it's something more, something less. If you decide to establish the preliminary penalty at $10,000, for example, then, is that $10,000, what would you get in exchange for a $10,000 monetary penalty from actions on behalf of North Star? There is, that, so that's why I think having that preliminary penalty amount is important to have in place before we go into those negotiations. And I think you'll still get where you're assuming North Star wants to engage. I think that you will still hopefully get where you're wanting to be, which is to have some commitment on the part of North Star to actually take some concrete steps that will improve the reliability of their system and the availability of water to its customers. And then if the negotiations fall through, then we're back to the penalty, but we'd still be at, for example, at this particular stage, at a preliminary penalty stage. And if at the end, the commission decides, well, the negotiations just didn't work and we don't feel it's appropriate to fine them $90,000, then we still have that option because no final penalty will have been ordered by the commission at this particular stage.
Okay, I think I agree with everything you just said. I've been told that we couldn't do a negotiation on this because the penalty goes to the state and we can't mess it with that. We can't claw it back. As long as we can, you've got your numbers here. I think, $80,000, $90,000 to start there. Say, this is what you're looking at. What do we have for, what do you think of Pinocchi's idea of individually wiring and putting in a breaker for each one? Commissioner Pinocchi, I could do that in a weekend with a roll of wire. That's, it's not going to bite into their $19,000. Second pump placed in the deal. It'll be more than that. But if we work from the position of this is what you're looking at, let's talk about, do you want to pay us the money? And the state gets it and you're still going to have problems. You're going to be back here next week. Or you want to give good service through better reliability, et cetera. For example, it's my understanding that you mentioned meters several times. But part of the problem with meters is some of the homeowners don't want the meters. Well, North Star can't be held responsible for that. Unless they get a court order or something, I guess. But I think there needs to be a robust discussion on this is what you're looking at. What would you like to do? And what are your problems that we can help you with? Not just heavy-handed government, because a prior legal firm was very difficult to work with. So with that, well, I'm not going to close it off. I'm just closing off trying to wind it up here. I would like to very formally say that I'd like to have discussions include individually wiring with individual breakers, a port so that they can use trucks if they have to put into the reserve, and a second pump there. So if the first one goes out, the second one keeps on going. And if it's a matter of a couple $1,000s, I got the pen that signs for money to bring in a well expert, perhaps to sit down in these negotiations and say, it's easy to do this. You can do that. Have you thought of? I don't know the level of expertise of the people running North Star. I have no idea what their attorney is going to think. We need expert advice, I think, in this case, as to what the functional problems are. not necessarily reliability, and what are solutions, so that our negotiations are based on facts on hand and not just relying on hearsay. Are there other commenters from the commission side of this thing? Yep, Commissioner Wilborn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Laura, I believe that my questions the answers were fairly well flushed out in your response to President Molnar, but just so I'm crystal clear, I think what he's talking about and you're talking about, just help me understand that nothing that you're talking about, or that his suggestions, none of them would be precluded in what you're suggesting. It's just that what you're suggesting is probably a little simpler or smoother or more efficient way to get at the same end. Am I understanding that correct?
Mr. President, Commissioner Wilborn, yes, you are correct.
Thank you. No further questions, Commissioner President Molnar.
Commissioner Fielder.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this issue's been going on for, I know that the order here, the memo that we have in our packets talks about the issues that surfaced about a year ago, but the first week I was on the commission in January of 2021 was when that order was issued, 7744E, to start really digging into this. And so this agency's been working on this for a long time. And I really sympathize with the customers that have had to endure insufficient utility service for so long. And this, if the commission adopts this motion today, or we don't have a motion yet, but if the commission adopts this recommendation today, it looks to me like there's actually two opportunities for North Star Development to come to the negotiating table. One is after the preliminary penalty is established by the commission, and we hold the hearing, and they can choose to negotiate during that period if they wish. They have a date certain by which they need to let us know they want to negotiate. And then after that hearing, the commission sets a final penalty. And at that time, they can also make a request to negotiate. Is that correct?
Mr. President, Vice President Fielder, yes, that is correct. And in fact, even if we were to pursue this in district court, if they just simply refuse to pay at any time, they could come in and ask to try to negotiate. But yes, as you laid it out, that is correct. Those two times are available.
Okay. And it's, just to be clear, the opportunity for them to negotiate is provided, it's a statutory provision, correct? They have that right to do that? Or is this something that we're offering them?
Mr. President, Vice President Fielder, the statutes that deal with penalties don't specifically say that. We're just giving them the opportunity to do that. I mean, at any time, someone is assessing monetary penalties, generally speaking, you would have the right to just come in and have a discussion about it, as an alternative to just simply contesting it and having it go through a court process. But for the reasons that I think everyone here is talking about, staff wanted to make that recommendation as soon as possible. So if North Star was interested in coming in and trying to talk about some of these non-monetary actions to basically account for their failure to comply with Montana law, that this would be a good starting place for them to do that.
I agree that it would, and I'm going to support the staff's recommendation on this because I do want to see North Star come to the table swiftly and seriously negotiate proper improvements so these customers can receive the service that they have a right to receive. I'm beyond frustrated, and I know a lot of us are, with how long it's taken to get to this point, and that's us, and we're not the ones with the water turned off on us. So I really, really do sympathize with every single customer that's had to endure this. My next question is also regarding timing, though. I mean, this has been going on since actually 2020 that I'm aware of where there's been inadequate service. So what's the time frame look like in staff's opinion on if North Star chooses to negotiate some proper improvements and you bring a settlement back to the commission, what's the time frame looking like for something to be on our desk again for us to make a decision on?
So, Mr. President, excuse me, Vice President Fielder. So one of the reasons that I'm the one who chose the dates for having a hearing and for having North Star tell us whether they're interested in negotiations, because I recognized that things need to be moving along. And so it's also the same reason that we selected a 60-day negotiating period, because we want things to move along. And so as long as I'm here working on this case, I can guarantee you that as soon as we can get things moving along, it will keep moving along, because I do appreciate the fact that the customers have been struggling with this situation for a long time. I know the commission itself has been involved in this particular docket since 2020. And so I think we all agree that it's time to get some action. And so as the leader of the work team here, I'm committed to doing that. And that is part of the reason that you see these tight deadlines. And as soon as we can get that information, if we could meet with North Star, negotiate, have something in place by 30 days, my goal would be to get that to the commission as soon as humanly possible.
Is it fair to ask if they've indicated an interest in negotiating, or is that question off the table at this point?
Well, Mr. President, Vice President Fielder, I haven't had any discussions with North Star about it other than a quick conversation this morning where I got a call from their attorney just telling me they wouldn't be in a position to attend the business meeting today. And I just told them, well, the staff memo was out there. She did indicate to me that she had reviewed that, no other comments. And I just told her that that usually the video was up, by the next day, and she was welcome to view that. And if for some reason she couldn't access that video, feel free to let me know and I try to help her out with that. So I have no idea whether they're interested at this time or not.
Okay. My next question is just a procedural matter, and that is, you mentioned that the negotiations with the authorized staff and the utility would be confidential. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, Mr. President, Vice President Fielder. Yes.
And what is the purpose for those negotiations being confidential?
So if you don't mind, Mr. President, Vice President Fielder, I'm going to have Teresa answer that question because she's more recently been involved with a number of negotiations, and I think she'd be in the best position to answer that in an articulate fashion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Mr. President, Vice President Fielder, the reason that negotiations are confidential is not just in this scenario. It's almost all settlement negotiations are confidential. And that's so that parties come to the table with all of their cards. You're not hiding anything to secretly hold it for future litigation. You're not waiting for the other party to hold it against you. You're just coming there saying, here's what we have, here's what we expect. Let's see if we can meet in the middle. It really helps parties have more candor and openness with each other during the negotiations. So almost all of them are confidential.
All right, thank you. Mr. President, I don't think I have any further questions for staff.
Are there any other commissioners? Oh. Okay, are there any other commissioners that have questions of staff at this time?
May I make a
Commissioner Bukacek has a motion.
Okay, I move the commission adopt staff's recommendation as stated on pages 11 and 12 of the August 1, 2025 staff memorandum in docket number 2020.09.094.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have a third? I saw a green light. Come on. Okay. I know. Is there any further discussion?
So in defense of my motion, I think the defense is pretty much self-evident in this case because the memo is so well done. And then Ms. Wachowski, Teresa, you have driven everything else home. So I'm just going to be very, very brief. The North Star development is in my district. I have read every written complaint provided to the PSC in 2024 and 2025. I have one of them from today and one of them from yesterday. Last year, I met face-to-face with some of the residents. North Star residents, I just want to make sure they know they've been heard, and I believe I can vouch for all of us at the PSC that we have a deep sympathy for those experiencing repeated inadequate provision of life-sustaining water. The memorandum lines out the chronology of how North Star has repeatedly violated its legally required reasonable adequacy of service in cooperation with the PSC. Much, but not all of PSC staff's diligent, competent work in this case is lined out in the memorandum before us. And I get the impression that some of the North Star customers have read it and they pass it along to others. I think it would really help people understand. I support my motion to adopt staff's recommendation. I thank you for this fine work.
Commissioner Fielder.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, Commissioner Bukacek, for taking the time to meet with your constituents on this. I hope that that the residents of North Star can now see that we've been doing a lot of work on this for a long time. And although this motion today, which I will definitely support, should it pass, it's not going to bring the immediate relief that the customers desire. It's just not. But it is hopefully going to lead to some real and significant and serious corrections to that system. I really, really hope that the utility will take advantage of the invitation to negotiate to improve this system so that we can all move on and we don't have to deal with inadequate service to the customers there anymore. The worst case scenario would be that North Star declines to negotiate and implement better infrastructure to serve the customers, and the fine goes to the general fund. And this is one of the reasons that I think we've tried to work so much with the utility for so long, was to get them to improve and provide the service to the people, because when we find them, it doesn't help the people. It goes into the state general fund, and that's kind of a black hole. Okay? It doesn't benefit the customers directly. It doesn't come to this agency either. So there's been some very good reasons why it's taken so long, but I really appreciate the motion that Commissioner Bukacek made today, which includes very swift timelines from a regulatory standpoint to get this moved along and hopefully get to some resolution where finally, once and for all, customers can get their water and we can live happily ever after. Thank you.
Much like the proverbial free lunch, happily ever after seems to be somewhat elusive. Are there any further comments? Commissioner Wellborn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will also be supporting this motion. I think this motion strikes a balance. I think it demonstrates that doing nothing is just isn't an option, but I also think that it gives ample and abundant opportunity to the utility to do better. And I think the ball is in their court to play it however they want. But I think this is definitely a step in the right direction, and I appreciate your motion and your work on this, Commissioner Fielder. And again, I'll be supporting it.
Any further comments from any commissioners on the motion before us? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Staff, it's in your hands. Okay, seeing no further business to come before this commission. Oh, travel reports. How could I forget? So, travel report commission initiated. Who is the staff or commissioner who exceeded $500? Yep. Guilty as charged.
Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Amanda Webster, and I'm a staff attorney with the Commission and Department of Public Service Regulation. I'm here to report on round trip travel from Helena to Kalispell from July 15th through 18th, 2025, which cost $1,413.92. This cost was particularly high due to lodging in the peak summer season in Kalispell and no availability at state rate hotels. The purpose of this travel was to facilitate an evidentiary hearing on Northwest Services Class D application in docket 2025.03.026. This contributes to the department's statutory duties to regulate intrastate motor carrier operations and hold a hearing on protested applications for motor carrier certification. Thank you.
Okay. Next person. I just looked at her. Are there other reports?
Yes, Mr. President, Commissioners, my name is Pamela Snyder-Varnes. I am a staff attorney here with the Public Service Commission, and I basically ditto everything Ms. Webster just said about the travel to Kalispell. It was for the purpose of holding a hearing on an application for a certificate of public convenience and necessity by Northwest Services. And my costs were the same. It was extraordinary, due in part to the very tight timeline for setting a hearing on an application for a CPCN, and that is statutory. At times, it puts us in a position of holding a hearing in an area such as Kalispell, where it's a tourist destination and hotels are not willing to accept the state rate. And so that is why the costs are somewhat high. The hearing was held over 2 days. About a dozen witnesses testified. Commissioner Fielder presided. Commissioner Bukichek attended because this application involved both of their districts. It was Flathead, Lake, and Lincoln counties. We had established motor carriers, Republic and Evergreen, protesting the application. It was limited to commercial or roll-off services, and we're seeing applications for that particular service due to construction in the state of Montana. And with that, we are open to questions.
Do any commissioners have any questions? Seeing none, but just out of curiosity, how much are they getting in Kalispell during tourist season for motel room? I mean, you might not know because we didn't pay that, or I guess we did. How much is it?
It was $430 and $467 per night.
About the same as Bozeman.
Mhm.
That's brutal, but that's the way it is. So thank you both for your post-travel accountability report.
Mr. President, I have one as well.
Should have known.
Thank you, Mr. President. My post-travel accountability report is also included in the packets for today for the same hearing, the PCN hearing. I was a presiding officer. It was in Kalispell, Montana. My expenses are for round trip travel from Thompson Falls to Kalispell and back, and then the same hotel. There's not very many options in Kalispell during summer, or any city in Montana during tourist season. It's very difficult to get a reasonably priced hotel, but it was a good hearing. And we did go the night before the hearing to make sure that the staff did a great job bringing all the equipment, hauling it all over, and arriving early. And Commissioner Bukichek was there early as well to help with setup. Well, staff had it pretty well in hand. We did have to move buildings, so threw a wrinkle into things, but we packed up everything and moved it to another building. And then at the end of the hearing, the second day, we were able to get it all packed up and loaded up and ready to transport back. But my total, I estimated that it was probably going to cost around $2,000 for all my expenses for the trip, and it ended up coming in less at $1,579.12. The dates were July 15th through the 18th. And I think that is all I'm supposed to report today. So thank you.
Thank you. Do any other commissioners have an accountability report from the same meeting? Too late. Okay, go ahead.
Do you have any report? Okay, yeah, Commissioner Bukichek lives really close to there, so she was able to do it without any cost, which was very helpful. But this is a very good example. I brought this up, I think it was our last meeting. From my count, there was $1,500 in fees charged, $500 per party that participated in this application. So there was 3 parties, the applicant and 2 contesters. Okay, so the agency collected $1,500 in fees, and that was about the amount that it costs for each one of the three that reported today to go. So our costs were literally 3 times more than what the agency collected. Just an FYI, something that we need to take a look at so that our utility customers are not subsidizing the cost for these PCN hearings. Hopefully, we can get that straightened out going forward.
Anything further? And you didn't have one? Okay, excellent. Are there any announcements? Seeing none. The date of the next business meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, August 12th, 2025. It'll be chaired by Commissioner Wellborn. Therefore, seeing no further business to come before this commission, for the record, the time is 2:45 p.m. and the date is August 5th, 2005. This meeting is adjourned.